Man City nil, Tottenham 2. One thing I saw from this game was how managers can change teams, how it can change everything of how a team plays against another team. So we've seen City lose to Spurs before. That's like a common theme. We've seen them lose at home, away from home. Last season was a 4-0. This season was a 2-0. But what is different this year is that this is a much better City team. A City team that is expected to, if not compete for the Premier League title, win the Premier League title. So when they have such a high expectation, you would expect Spurs to fold normally. But you could see from performances, i.e. Richarlison, Brennan Johnson, Kudus, I'm going to come to him in a bit. And then you have Pedro Porro. You have the entire defensive line and the midfield line cooperating well. And that is what ultimately won them the game. Yes, they were deadly. Yes, Kudus, Richarlison up front, they're pressing. Pretty much won Tottenham the game. But what shouldn't be understated is how well their defensive structure was, their midfield structure was. So I would liken Thomas Frank already to Oliver Glasner. We've seen Thomas Frank's teams with Brentford, how deadly they were for some of the bigger sides in the Premier League. Now, you look at what they did today. Isn't this exactly what Crystal Palace has been doing this entire last year? To any of the big teams, they act like a bogey team. Why? Because when it comes to their defensive structure, it is 4 defenders and then 5 midfielders packed into one defensive structure. And then the spaces are so compact, you cannot penetrate them with ease. So you can't just flow through them. Example, Man United, of course. You look at their midfield and compare it to Tottenham. Like the way that Tottenham's midfield was organized and the spaces between the defenders and the midfielders, it was tight. And it was Richarlison / Kudus pressing the defenders, pressing the ball. So Palhinha and Sarr always pressing in a pair. So it wasn't an individual effort where it was just Palhinha or just Sarr. And that's when midfields break apart. When the midfielders are not cooperating together, when it's one or the other doing a certain job, then you see the midfielders break apart. You look at the fullbacks in Pedro Porro and Spence, they bomb down, up and down, and they work with their wingers. So they don't just isolate Kudus, and Kudus doesn't just isolate Pedro Porro at the back. They're always covering each other, and that way they were able to double up on whoever was coming on that side. So if it was Ait Nouri before he got subbed off, or if it was Reinders trying to make spaces in, there was no space for these players to play in. So we know how City have a lot of technical players, and their entire core is on technical players. If you look at Cherki, you look at Reinders, they couldn't do much. They were pretty much stifled today because there was no space to operate in. And when you don't have space, Haaland is pretty much useless. As we saw today, he was not up to par. And why? This is all because Thomas Frank's tactics, Thomas Frank's vision, let's say, for Tottenham. Because if you just look at the last 3 games that they played, if you just look at their last 3 games, they played PSG, they played Man City, they played Burnley. Burnley, of course, everyone would expect them to win. Man City away from home, PSG Super Cup. Now, yes, they lost to PSG. Technically, they took them to draw. And City, they just, let's be honest, they deserved a win today and they should have got more. Because let's talk about this. How was Trafford not penalized even once? Yes, he made mistakes, but what about him kneeing Kudus and people saying that fair play, carry on? And don't forget, in the same sequence, he also handballed outside the box. Yet, nothing doing because you know what? VAR can't view that. Trafford should have got a yellow card. On top of that, he was just messing up throughout the game. Now, maybe that might just urge City to go for Donnarumma now. Maybe just secure the deal. But as things stand now, Trafford is their number 1. Edison, who knows? He might be going to Galatasaray. He might not be. And now City are in this limbo of what do we do at the back line? Because yeah, they've invested in the front line. They've invested in the midfield. But now Ait Nouri is injured. We don't know how long he might be injured for now. And if you look at their defense, their centre-backs especially, it's not as secure as it once used to be. If you look back to even 2017 or 18 with Laporte, company, those were defenses, even though they weren't the best of best defenders, of course, I mean Laporte, they still had a defensive structure and it was enough to not cause a worry for the keeper. That is how Edison was sheltered for all these years. now that you see the defense has a shaky structure to it, now that there is no Rodri to command the defenses, now you're seeing Man City fall apart. Now, Rodri, when he came on today, wasn't the best, and I understand that he hasn't played for how long and he got injured again. And it's going to take time for City, but all I'm saying is the worst thing to do is face a wounded City, and the next home game for City is Man United. So, and the derby, it's after the international break. That could be very, very tough. Yeah, I know they lost to Spurs today, but Spurs in midfield is a totally different demon to most other clubs, which is why they got as far as they did in the Europa League, as far and they won the Europa League. Now, what can Tottenham do? I would say Tottenham is probably one of the three most fearsome teams in the Premier League this season. Yeah, you might say Chelsea, you might say Arsenal. I think they're above Chelsea, Arsenal, and United in terms of threat. In terms of what they can do because of their structure, because of Mohamed Kudus, especially Mohamed Kudus. It could be it could be very dangerous for the Premier League, especially if Tottenham go out in the Champions League early. So what do you guys think about this game? Comment down below and I'll see you on the next one.